professional services regionally. So clients trust us to help grow and strengthen their organization and service delivery when they're having problems, like they're getting lost and losing focus on their business, when chaos reigns, and when they start over promising and under delivering. We provide solutions and help by developing strategies based on the pain points, but then also on long-term goals. We then not only help them, but are there to help them as well. Help them do what they should, as well as the things that they shouldn't. We help reduce frustrations, hopefully help them keep more money, less customer friction because of better customer satisfaction, and also some happier employees. So with that said, let's pop on over to our first slide. We got a number there, 1440. And because we're talking about time management, 1440 in this particular case represents the total number of minutes in a day. That's it. It's not 1439, it's not 1441. We got 1440 minutes in a day. You can't get them back once they're gone. We could just talk about 480, right? That's the minutes in a 8-hour period. But I'm guessing, like most of us, you aren't just working 8 hours, are you? And why not also try to improve your efficiency and effectiveness outside of the office as well as inside of the office during normal business hours? So time is the most valuable asset in the world. You can't buy it, you can't rent it, you can't borrow it, and you certainly can't get it back once it's gone. So our topic says time management, but it's really not our topic because you can't really manage time. It happens whether you like it or not. A second is a second. So let's change that topic a little bit, shall we? And let's call it self-management, because that's really what we're talking about here. So you might say, but Glenn, there are thousands of books written and hours of research about time management. Are you saying all those authors and professors are wrong? No, absolutely not. What they're doing is utilizing the reality that people typically like the idea that if something doesn't utilize the word self, it's easier to fix because it's not really related to or about us or them, right? So if we're going to be successful with this concept of it's about self-management, we need to make a few changes. And we want to keep those changes small because we're all more likely to continue doing something if it's not too drastic a change. Okay, great example of that. Start of every new year, folks do a lot of New Year resolutions. They make these big promises to themselves, and within a couple of weeks, that stuff's all gone away because it was too drastic a change for people to be able to deal with. So much easier if we do things on a small scale first, okay? And one of those small changes that you should make is to focus and figure out what your number one goal is, both professionally and personally. And that goal should be as clear as possible. In fact, it should be SMART. It should be specific. It should be measurable, should be achievable, should be realistic, and should be timely or time-bound. So as an example, earn more money is not a SMART goal. But increasing my productivity by 10% in 3 months in hopes of getting a $1,000 bonus, that could be a SMART goal if it's realistic and actually achievable. So see the difference between the two of those? That sounds good. Here's where we come in with helping you get to those SMART goals and possibly even increasing that productivity and allowing you to get that bonus. So there are a large number of studies that show that for most people, morning is when we are at our cognitive best. and then our capacity declines throughout the day as we get tireder. So with that in mind, what's the first thing most people do when they get to the office? A lot of folks either check their email or check their social media. And what happens? They get sucked in, and before you know it, an hour, maybe 2, maybe 3 or more has gone by. So instead of starting your day like that, here's a better suggestion. Start your day right with the most important thing, okay? Instead of taking that time and take that time and focus on the most important thing that you need to accomplish each day. And that should be tied to that number one goal that we've already talked about, right? It's actually suggested to devote the first 2 hours of your workday to your top priority to get that thing done or well on its way to being done. Now, I know the next thing you're going to say is, yeah, but Glenn, I'm always getting interrupted by people coming in and asking things like, how was your weekend or your evening? Hey, do you have a couple minutes to talk? Or the infamous, can I run something past you? Okay, so I get it, but let's address this overall concept by suggesting it's okay to say no politely and suggest another time. So just like you have your own potentially ineffective habits that you're trying to change, others have them too. Your objective here is to change how those habits of others affect your goals by suggesting catching up later in the day or the week or the month, depending on how much you really want to catch up with them. Remember that 1440, that number's not changing, and your most important thing. And while we're thinking about that, remember every yes to one thing is a no to something else. We also have to be aware of distant elephants because small things grow. And that, hey, do you have a minute? Can quickly turn into 10 or 15 minutes or even longer. And again, before you know it, your most productive time of the day is gone. Realize that this is a two-way street, so you can't really expect people to stop interrupting you, but then make time for you at the drop of a hat. So I know the next thing you want to ask is, all right, Glenn, you're so smart here with this idea, and it sounds pretty good. How do I get that 2 hours to focus? Here's one way to think about it. Time block your calendar. Schedule your morning or even your entire day, if necessary, down to 15 to 30 minute blocks of time. Picture your ideal calendar. What would it look like? And then work to turn that into reality. Treat your daily 2 hour productive time at the start of the workday meeting as if it were a doctor's appointment. Okay? We very seldom, once we schedule a doctor's appointment and have it on our calendar, unless something really major comes up, we typically don't cancel those because it's really hard to get back in again. So treat that time as if it's in a doctor's appointment and make the commitment to it. If somebody wants to get a few minutes, ask if it can wait and explain why. If you're doing focused work toward your number one priority or goal, even your boss should be willing to wait a few hours unless there's a crisis. And everything goes out the window when there's a crisis. After a while, this kind of scheduling at the beginning of every day will become the new norm. And people will learn not to bother you during the first couple hours of the day. Some people even utilize the Pomodoro method by setting a timer for 25 minutes, then taking a 5-minute break. and then resetting their timer to work for another 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, and so on and so on. And at the end of it, taking a longer break, either at the hour or at a 90 minutes, whatever works for you and your cycle. Another habit that's not very efficient is the use of to-do lists. People love to-do lists, and you see there 50% of the things are done within a day or even an hour. But then there's 41% of those things that never get completed. And why is that? Because we're not making any distinction on the time requirement. We just got a particular item there. We don't know if it's going to take 5 minutes or 5 hours. And that's why one of the reasons why a to-do list is not very, very successful. We have a tendency to focus on the urgent and not the important. We also like to cross things off. And so sometimes we'll put things on that might take as long to write on the list as to actually complete, so that we can go through the process of scratching it through and saying, look, I've accomplished that thing. Okay. That releases a little bit of dopamine in our brain for something that's been accomplished. That feels good. And so we continue to do that. So we'll put something else on our to-do list and then cross it off. But to-do lists can actually, because of this 41% of things that never get done, to-do lists can actually cause stress. This Zeigarnik psychological term for when unfinished goals cause intrusive, uncontrolled thoughts. So you've got that to-do list, you've got that 41% of things that are not getting done, and it starts to weigh on you, and you start to think about it, and you start to think about it after work and maybe in the middle of the night, and it really starts to mess with your head. So a better way to do things, instead of a to-do list, what are we going to do? We're going to put it on our calendar. Why? Because if it's not on our calendar, it's not important. It's okay to schedule those to-dos on your calendar. Maybe it's out a month or even 2 or further, if that's the priority or importance that they have on your schedule. But notice we're putting down approximate times here. So instead of a to-do list, well, we don't know how long it could potentially take. If we've got a 5-hour thing to do, let's block 5 hours on our calendar in order to be able to accomplish that. But here's the thing. When it does finally appear, you need to deal with it and not just reschedule it out another couple of months. Okay, so most important thing, starting your day with that and blocking out your calendar for the things that you need to accomplish on a day-to-day basis is one of the best ways to ensure effective use of your time. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about many people's number one nemesis at work, and that is meetings. It's an area where a significant amount of time can be spent or wasted is meetings. And I believe Shakespeare was the first to wonder if everything required a meeting, to meet or not to meet. That is the question. If you get an invite to a meeting that you don't think you need to attend, respond back with a tentative or a deny and ask if that meeting is really necessary. Okay. One of the things that need to consider, can it be done in another way? Instead of having a meeting, can we just walk over to the next office and have a conversation? MBWA, management by walking around, right? Or can we just do a quick phone call instead of that meeting? Also consider the cost of the meeting versus the benefit. So here's a great example. Let's say everybody that you're dealing with has, for rough numbers, a $50,000 salary. Okay, that works out to about $25 an hour. So if you've got 8 people in a meeting for an hour, that's $200. If that meeting is held weekly, that's over $10,000 a year. And the question is that meeting really worth 10 grand? If not, maybe it's time to stop having that meeting on a weekly basis just for the sake of having a meeting. Another thing, obviously, sending out an agenda in advance is huge. So people know what the meeting's about, and they know what's going to be covered, and they know who's going to cover it, and they know how long each item is going to have to be discussed. Stand-up or walking meetings, if that can be done, having stand-up meetings makes the meetings definitely much, much shorter, okay? Single topic discussions, one item can usually be resolved in 5 to 10 minutes. And yet many times we'll pack a bunch of those together into a 60-minute meeting when they aren't even necessarily related. So now we've got multiple people in there that don't need to be there for the whole time that are stuck there for the whole time. That goes back again to the cost of the meeting. How about 20-minute meetings instead of half an hour, or 50-minute meetings instead of 60 minutes? Okay. Much of the blame for our 60-minute meeting culture can be laid at the feet of Bill Gates there at the bottom left. Microsoft Office's default meeting setting is for an hour. And unfortunately, there's no easy way to reset that default in Office. So every meeting needs to be manually changed on setup. And it usually doesn't happen. But it's worth it for the time you'll save, because if you've got a 50-minute meeting rather than a 60-minute meeting, you get that 10 minutes between meetings for that bio break, or to go back and pick things up. You know, when meetings run a full hour and you've got a number of meetings back to back to back to back, by about the second or third meeting, you're starting 15, 20 minutes late because you've got travel time or whatever between them. So by having the 20-minute or the 50-minute meeting allows a little bit of time for getting to that next meeting as well. Daily huddles, instead of having meetings, an early start 15-minute meeting at some point during the day on how's the day lay out, could be another way to eliminate a lot of other meetings. In agile project management, this is one of the things that they use very, very effectively to eliminate a lot of other meetings. We talked already about preventing those back-to-back meetings also, because it allows time for getting to the next meeting, maybe being able to digest the content or take some notes from the meeting that you're already in, time to get to the next one, the bio break or whatever. Last little item there. How about one day a week where nobody schedules a meeting? It's a philosophy: no meeting Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or all three. Wouldn't that be nice, right? So you could actually focus on the things that need to be done and getting the work done. The book that is cited there, Traction by Gino Wickman, it's a really great book on a lot of topics, specifically geared towards small business, but it's especially useful on how to hold more effective meetings. Here at Celerity, we utilize that as our gold standard for how we conduct our meetings internally. All right, the next one, the bane of some people's existence, email, right? Either we love it or we hate it. The average worker spends, and go ahead and give me a guess on what you think the average person spends per day reading and answering email. I'll give you a second or two for that, and then I'll pop up the answer for you. $2.6 hours. 2.6 hours. That's about a third of the day. Why do we do it? Well, because again, we feel like we're accomplishing something. Every time we hit that send button, our body again releases a little bit of the chemical dopamine, and that makes us feel good. So we keep doing it until it becomes a habit. And just like starting the day with email and social media and missing that opportunity for those first couple hours to do important work, we get into this rhythm of checking email all the time. So we got a little poll here And you can go to pollev.com/celerity, GROU 311. How much time do you spend on email a day? And obviously the type of job that you have could change the amount of time that you spend on that. Just curious to see. You can also text through your phone to 22333 with your choices of A, B, or C. I'm not seeing any updates on this. All right, let's move on to the next one. So one of the ways that we can try to break this habit of so much time on email, right? A lot of folks, I call them quick draws, the old cartoons, Quick Draw McGraw. As soon as you're carrying around your cell phone, as soon as that thing dings, that an email is popped in, you stop everything and you got to check it. And it happens so many times a day that you're constantly reaching for the phone. Okay. One of the things you can do is turn off that notification. So you're not getting the ding. So you don't have that quick draw syndrome, because really, how many of the emails you receive on a day-to-day basis do you really have to answer in the first couple of seconds? Right? So one way to do that and eliminate that, turn off those notifications, maybe even close it out. If you're working at the office, don't have Outlook open all the time or your email open all the time. And instead, schedule some time to review it using our 3-2-1-0 method. So 3 times a day for 21 minutes at a time to keep your inbox empty, to set to 0. Now, the previous slide said 2.6 hours a day typically spent on email. We've now got it down to 63 minutes, 3 times 21. So you just picked up about an hour and a half of time to be more productive and earn that bonus. When you do check the email and you're utilizing that 3-2-1-0 method, you want to apply the 4 Ds to everything that you look at. Okay. We're either going to do it. If it's something that we can do within a 5-minute time frame, go ahead and do it. Get it done. We can defer it, but if we defer it, what are we going to do? We're going to put it on our calendar so that we assure we have the time and the focus to work on it. We can delegate it to somebody else if it's not our thing that we should be doing, or we can just plain dump it. And that kind of goes back to that first thing, unsubscribing from unnecessary email newsletters, right? A lot of the stuff that comes in, you've been looking at customer sites or business sites, and all of a sudden you're starting to get all these newsletters in. Just unsubscribe from those so they're not popping in there, so you don't have to spend the time to dump it. And then there's one F. It's not the F you may be thinking about. File it. Archive it once you've addressed it, so it's out of there. You might need it for later. If so, go ahead and archive it or file it so you can find it. Another possibility, to get less email, send less. So limit the number of forwards or CCs or blind CCs that you do. Another good tip, best practice, is to use the subject line effectively. I had a boss at one point where all of his emails and all of his meetings, the agenda, the subject was always stuff. So you never really had any idea what the meeting was going to be about. There was no agenda, or you had to read through the whole email to figure out what he was asking for. So a better way could be to have things like, FYI in there, or action required versus to do. Action required is if they don't work for you and you're asking them to do something. To do is if they do work for you and you're asking them to do something. And then NRN, no response necessary, again, similar to the FYI sort of thing. And then that last one, we're in the Twitter age, if you will. And so think about limiting emails to 5 sentences or less. Really just getting to the meat and potatoes of what you're asking for or what you're trying to get done. Because let's be honest, if you spend all that time drafting a very, very long email, nobody's going to read it anyway. They might get through the first paragraph. They're going to skip a lot of the other stuff. So make it as pointed as possible. And that not only saves you time for crafting it, but it saves time for others to actually read it. So these are some best practices you can utilize for saving some time in email. All right, our next one here. Anybody recognize this bearded gentleman? He's probably most famous for noticing that the majority of the peas in his garden came from only a few of the plants. And after more scientific observation, he created what we now know as the 80-20 rule. His name, Vilfredo, Federico, Damaso, Pareto. 80% of results come from 20% of the action or work, okay? Don't get hung up on the exact percentages. Nobody's going to sit down and actually, figure out the 80s or 20s. It could be 75-25, could be 60-40. But overall, we spend much more time on things that don't matter than on things that do. In fact, 41% of knowledge worker time is spent on discretionary activities, things that people want to work on. Because being busy makes us feel good. Remember that dopamine? And makes us feel important. Okay. Sometimes it'd be good if we could just sit and think instead of feeling like we always have to be busy. So one of the ways that we can get down to our 20% is thinking about reviewing last week's time at work. And what did you spend your time on? Now, if everything was on your calendar, it'd be really easy to know what you've been working on, right? But you might have to do a mental exercise to try to remember the things that you were working on. In our lean management class, I talk about things that don't add value as being waste. So what are you wasting that 80% of your time on? And here's a suggestion. Similar to the 4 Ds for email, drop it. If it doesn't have any value, why are you doing it? Stop doing it. Again, delegate it to somebody else if it makes more sense for it to be with somebody else, or redesign whatever it is so as that it becomes part of your 20%. Remember, our most important thing, always focused on our number one goal and trying to get as much towards that goal as possible. Okay. Our next tip, let go of the more. There's always going to be more to do. There's always going to be more. 12 to 16-hour work days should not be the norm, and it's not healthy. You cannot be all things to all people. It's just not possible. Remember from the 80-20, effort does not always equal reward or completion. People who leave work at a consistent time of the day are less likely to feel very wired or anxious later at night and may have an easier time falling asleep. But if one day you're leaving work at 8 o'clock at night and one day you're leaving at 3 o'clock and et cetera, There's no consistency there. It's just like having a consistent bedtime for good sleep. Leaving work at a consistent time is better for your body as well. And remember, there's not always a direct association between the effort and reward. So focus on the 20% that's important and let go of the other 80. All right, another interesting topic for a slide, multitasking. There's a lot of people that talk about, oh, I'm always multitasking. Well, not really. There really is no such thing as multitasking. It's just that your brain is switching back and forth between things faster than you can imagine. In one 2009 study at Stanford University, they found that people who were considered heavy multitaskers were actually worse at sorting out relevant information from irrelevant details. They also showed greater difficulty when it came to switching from one task to another and were much less mentally organized. The study revealed that even when these chronic multitaskers were focusing on just a single task, their brains were less effective and efficient. So, multitasking, not something to focus on. Don't try it. Focus on the one thing at a time with our calendar scheduling, a Pomodoro technique, right? Our most important thing to utilize our 40 minutes the best way that we can. Mythical Man Month, there's a book called The Mythical Man Month that talks about the percentage of time when we're trying to switch back and forth between different things, how long it takes for our brain to reassociate. And basically, when you have to try to switch back and forth a great deal, you really almost get no focus time at all. And so without focus time, it's very difficult to get things done. Another reason not to try multitasking. All right, our next slide, procrastination. I know I've been putting this one off for a while. Hey, 20% of US men and women are considered chronic procrastinators. Sometimes we call this student syndrome, right? Putting things off as long as we can. It's not laziness. It's just a tendency to put off important, less pleasant things for easier, more pleasant things. That may be like answering email, release that dopamine that makes us feel good, right? That pile of papers on the desk that you just do not want to deal with, that phone call that you don't want to return, okay? You're procrastinating on those things because they're not going to be pleasant. There's two primary reasons for doing it. Either a lack of motivation to get it done, or an underestimation of our future emotion versus our present emotion. So if I wait to do it, it's going to be better when I do it. So this is one of those things, kind of goes along with the New Year's resolutions, right? It's the middle of the year and maybe person needs to lose weight, but they say, you know what, I'm going to wait. That's going to be a New Year's resolution. You've got 6 months. You could get started on that now. Why procrastinate? Why put it off? Because you're thinking, if I make it a New Year's resolution, then I'm going to feel a lot better about it. I'm going to feel, and that whole future emotion. But do it now and save the time and have that extra 6 months of good time towards that particular activity. So one of the ways we can stop procrastination, again, putting things on our calendar that we need to get done. And that way, it's not one of that 41% of things sitting out there on a to-do list that'll never get accomplished. It's there on the calendar. We know we've got the time set aside to actually get it done. Stop dreaming about this improved future self and be that person now. And then sometimes sharing whatever that goal is to accomplish with a partner or your team for accountability, right? This is one of the things with working out. Having somebody there as a workout buddy to ensure that you go and do the workouts is another way for that accountability to ensure that we don't procrastinate. I'd just like to stay home tonight and watch a movie. Well, if you got somebody there holding you accountable, then that's not going to happen. The same thing at work. I need to call that person back, but that's not going to be a good conversation. If there's somebody to help hold you accountable to ensure that that call gets made, that's a good thing. And it eliminates that procrastination. All right. I like to call the next slide the money slide. It's kind of our wrap-up slide of key topics. I know we haven't gone the whole hour, but so to summarize, I like to take all the key points and put them into that one slide that we call the money slide. So here's our keys to success. Remember that time management is really self-management. It's about getting yourself geared to the things that you need to do. Figure out what that number one goal is professionally and personally. Make sure that it's smart. Remember the power of no. And for everything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so make sure that you're utilizing that no effectively. Schedule everything as much as possible, as much as your job will allow. That's going to eliminate a lot of problems for you. Remember the 80-20 rule. 80% of what we do is just kind of the fluff. Focus on the 20% of the important things to do. Don't try to multitask. It's not an effective use of your time. And then also understand that there's always going to be more to do than you have time to do it. That's one of the reasons for tomorrow. A lot of things can wait till tomorrow. Leaving work at a consistent time is better for your health. 16-hour days are not good. And so these are some of the keys to success. And I don't know if that earlier poll worked for you all or not, but I would be interested to see which of you think that you might utilize some of these things that we've talked about.
Hey, Glenn, this is Corey.
Yeah.
While we're waiting on the poll results, Cole sent me a message saying that Zoom froze for him, so he's not able to view any questions or anything in the chat.
Okay.
So you may need to check that on your end, as I'm just in as a participant.
Let's see if I can find that. I don't see any open questions. No, I don't see anything open right now. Again, this is the first time that that I'm particularly trying this poll through Zoom. But here's also a listing of some self-management time books that you might be interested in if you're really interested in trying to improve your time. That first one, the 15 Secrets about Time Management, is very, very good. That's where the whole concept of 1440 and everything comes from. The Daily Routine Makeover, also a good book, talks about the different ways that that people schedule. 80-20 principle again. Tiny Habits, that's from a Stanford researcher who the whole concept of doing small changes, and instead of trying to make massive change to your life, do small changes instead, and you're going to be much more likely to continue them. And so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to change our habits. And so by doing small changes to habits, we're much more successful. Traction, the book by Gino Wickman. What scheduling app or software do you recommend? I use Outlook for scheduling everything. It's also great because at the end of the day, when I need to, working on multiple things, and I need to put in my time for our time tracking system, because I've got everything on my calendar, it's really easy for me to figure out what hours go to which projects and tasks. And so it's just so easy to put it inside of Outlook. Will this presentation be uploaded anywhere? Yes, we'll figure out a way to do that. We'll probably forward that to Jason and go from there, so as that you all can have access to that. Certainly from these books are ones that you might be wanting to see those titles again. All right, so here's a couple other things and other ways that you can make better use of your time, and some other activities that we have going on here. On June the 12th, a week from Friday, we're going to have a 1-hour discussion about effective virtual communications and meetings management, kind of a continuation of some of the topics that we talked about here, and ways to have better meetings. And then every Thursday from 12 to 12:30, we've got our Celerity Live, that is just kind of an ongoing conversation about how we're adapting to whatever the new norm is that we're trying to get to with the COVID-19. And we have different speakers every week to talk about a variety of topics. You can sign up for those and get that. And then here's another way you might save yourself some time, by having a better understanding of how to deal with projects that you have to work on. So we've got a 4-hour primer in project management for no cost. The next one of those is on Friday, July the 10th. So we'll give you some high-level understanding of project management fundamentals, some templates, and some discussion time to think about projects. We suggest that you come to the 4-hour primer with a project idea, or maybe a project that you're just getting ready to start. Can be personal, professional, either way. And then we'll go through our about 3.5 hour talk about project management, what it is, and some of the key things that you need to do for successful projects. And then we'll give you about 30 minutes to think about the information that's been presented and how you could utilize what we call our project management toolbox of templates and materials to have a better success rate. So again, that's open for anybody at no cost, July the 10th, and it's usually 8:30 to 12:30 if the time's not there, but you can follow that link to register. And then this obviously very short session is a building block for a lot of our other Celerity courses. A full-time management online class you can take, effective communications and meetings management. That's a one-dayer talking about managing organizational change and transition. That's a 1-day. Our best practices in project management is a 2-day class. Agile project management, a 2-day class. Best practices and effective project teams. That's when we actually bring on, well, not necessarily on site, but we limit to a particular organization, and we have project team members as well as business area members that maybe don't understand project management, have them work together over 2 or 3 days to get a better understanding of what project management is throughout the organization. Best practices in business analysis, and then hundreds of self-paced courses that we have available out on Celerity.com under a variety of subjects. And so check out Celerity.com for more information. And anybody have any other questions? Let me pop up here again. I've got a couple more. I didn't hear the 80-20. Can you explain? Sure. 80% of what we spend our time on, it really only comes down to 20% of the value. And so what's the 20%? What's the important stuff to focus on rather than the 80% of waste? And so really focus in on, and this comes from Vilfredo Pareto, came up with the idea of how this showed up. He saw it out in his garden. He noticed that some of the pea, only a couple of the pea plants were providing the majority of the peas for the garden. And he took that, and then he saw that in Italy that majority of the land was owned by only a small percentage of the people. And again, he saw this thing popping up, and he came up with this concept of the 80-20 rule. So our mission here at Celerity is helping people, organizations, and communities to thrive. So if we can ever be of assistance from either a training or a consulting or professional services perspective, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can talk to our sales staff at sales@celerity.com or by calling 888-272-4494. And I think I got one more slide. Yep. So I'd just like to thank you for your time today. And I know I'm going to give you back a few minutes. Please be safe out there, social distancing, be smart, continued success, and all the best for the rest of your day and into the future. And again, if there's anything we can do to help out, please don't hesitate to contact us. You can contact me directly at glenn.thomas@celerity.com if you have any questions about this or any other class as well. Well, thank you for your time, and all the best. Let's see, I've got another. Can you explain SMART again? Yes, let me go back to that slide. Hopefully I can get there. Specific. Yeah, I know there's another button here somewhere, but I can't remember where it's at. Bear with me. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So any goals that you create should have all 5 of those components to it. So just to say, again, the example, I'm going to earn more money, it's not very specific. I suppose you could measure it by seeing what you made last month against next month. Is it achievable? Sure. Is it realistic? Potentially, but there's no time factor here as well. Or to the example to the right, productivity up 10% in 3 months, equaling a $1,000 bonus or whatever. So much more specific. You can definitely measure your increased productivity. Is it achievable? Is it for you? Maybe it's 20% instead of 10%. Maybe it's 5%. So whatever is something that you think is real, achievable and therefore realistic, and also within a time factor. So I hope that helped with that. What was up? Yeah, those are the same questions as I've got here. All right, Cole, are you still there?
I think Cole is frozen.
Still frozen? Okay. I have no way to knowing if anybody is still on or not, so that's why I didn't want to close out, but I will go ahead and close the session. Thank you again for your time, and have a good rest of the day.